Now we're going to create IB outlets and actions for our buttons. So we need IB outlets, which will allow us to then assign answers to each button. The actions are so we can determine if the button was actually clicked. So I am going to open up the Assistant Editor now. And this is our view controller. And actually what we need is, let's see, we have our quiz view. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Just zoom out a little bit so we can see everything going on. So this view controller here, we don't actually have a view controller class for it. Let me see, I'll click on my view controller and go over here to the identity inspector. You can see it's just a regular class. What we want is to create a class that can sit behind this view controller. And so for that, we're going to add a class that's going to be called the detail view controller. So I'm going to right click on our app folder, do new file, and we want a Cocoa Touch class, and then we're going to have a view controller. So if I just change this to a UI view controller, let's see right here, and this is just going to be called detail view controller. You might even name it quiz view controller maybe, or quiz detail view controller, but because this is going to be a fairly simple app and I only have the two view controllers, I'll just leave it at that. All right, so here is our view controller, and what I want to do now is connect it. So if I go over here, go back to the identity inspector, so this one here, I can select detail view controller. Now go ahead and save. I've got a place to add my IB outlets, and here we are inside the detail view controller. So I'm going to add, actually I need one for this label. Make sure I've got that label selected, and I do. I'll control drag, create this IB outlet, so I can do it from the scene or from the document outline. And this is going to be question label. Then I'll create one for, actually I can go ahead and start with my buttons now. So we'll have our give up is actually going to be just an action, and I'll put that action down here, and I want to change this. So I've got the NS layout constraint. Because I have so many constraints going on, it might be kind of hard to click on this button. You can always click it in the document outline, but I've got it now, so I'm going to go ahead and drag. Actually, it just went back to the constraint, so I'll have to do it from here and drag that here, change it to an action. This is going to be give up button click. So I'll use this particular kind of naming convention, so I'll know what's going on with that, and it's very clear. And just create a little space there. Okay, so now back to our 4 buttons that we're going to be working with. So we have this, so I'll just call button number 1, and I'll just go through them like that. So button 1, and then I'll have 2, 3, 4. Then we'll create our actions. I think I might be on a constraint here. Nope, that looks good. So we'll have button 2. Then we'll have button 3 here. So button 3. And actually, if I want to be consistent with the naming, this would be 4, this would be 5. So we're going to use the top 3 and then the middle one in the second row. So I'm going to call it button 5. That leaves room for button 4 if I want to use it at some point. Okay, so we have those IB outlets wired up now. Next, we're going to create our actions, and we'll start putting them underneath the give up button. So here, let's create an action there. This is going to be button 1 click. All right, then we'll drag button 2, create an action there. Button 2 click. And here we'll have button 3. And we'll create an action there. Button 3 click. And finally button 4, and we'll create an action here. Actually this is button 5, sorry. So that's notice what I did here is create a button 5 IB outlet, which we already have. I'll delete that. I'm going to go back with an action. So you have to select the action up here and be explicit about what you're doing there, and click. Over here, I'm going to go ahead and close the editor. Make sure that button 5-click Iboutlets is not still there. So I'm going over here into the connections inspector, and I'm just going to look down, and you can see there it is. I want to remove that because at runtime that can give an error about the key constraint. It's kind of an odd error. It can be hard to understand what's happening, but I'll make that go away. And now we have our buttons wired up. And if I go into the iPhone 5, I just want to make sure everything is running at this point. So I'll start that up in the simulator. And really no changes in the UI part of this. Just everything looks to compile. I want to make sure the app still loads up, and I can go over into my detail view, and everything still looks pretty good. All right, so now we have that wired up. Next, what we're going to do is start bringing in more of our core data. So we have over here our models there, and if we go into our first view controller, we've got our table there. So we want to start adding questions and answers and start having this data come through that we can begin pulling it into our tables and into our detail quiz view.